Welcome, everyone. I'm here today with Zoya. Today, we're going to talk about the different paths of first-time founders, how different first-time founders can get started. So, Zoya, do you want to kick this off?
Yeah, would love to. Thanks for having me, Jeremy. So you and I work together on our Friday 11 a.m. slot, and so I'm excited to kind of talk about something else than we typically do week over week. So a bit of my journey. I have 20 years of financial services experience, primarily within banking and tech. My degrees in computer science and technology, so I've been very intentional about that path, and I could not wait to graduate actually early by 3.5 years. I accelerated my graduation date just so I can get into corporate. Like that is the one thing that I wanted to do, and I just was on a path to get there. And I had internships that kind of laid inroads into organizations. The first one was with MetLife, which is where I spent the bulk of my early career, and it was awesome. But a very different mindset from perhaps the entrepreneurs that express the desire to do so immediately out of college. And I meet those from Rutgers Business School or Rutgers undergrad, as an example. And it's just amazing to see how many of them are hungry to kind of get out there first time out the gate. Wasn't my journey. It took me about 20 years to step out of my own. But, when you say first time founder, which technically I am, I think it's a different qualification given the corporate experience that one would have otherwise in that first time founder seat versus someone who's coming out of college. So that's kind of what you and I were going to kick around today to see what those differences and strengths really are, in case there's folks that are out there that are straddling that decision, thinking that they've accumulated a wonderful set of experiences and skill sets within their corporate roles, looking to kind of flex that muscle and really take it outside into an entrepreneurial path and see if we can encourage some of them to take the leap.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think it's very different. We've both had like that corporate and then other perspective, right? Like right out of college, starting a business, like you're saying, starting a business right out of college is one thing. Starting it after years and years of experience or corporate experience is another. I have some of mine, but what are some of your takeaways from corporate that you've now brought into your first time founder role?
Yeah, I mean, the first question that I would ask myself, and one that I feel really confident knowing that there's a different kind of answer for me, having had that experience behind me, is how are you going to start a company if you've never been a part of one? Forget about building a product, because that's kind of what we're all out here trying to do, right? Product market fit and building our pitch decks and getting our investors and getting it out to market. But beyond that, beyond the product, there should be a company that you're ultimately looking to build out. And for that, to never have been part of one, I think is a major disadvantage. So that's probably one encouraging factor, whether it's an externship, an internship, in any way to become involved in an organization, a mature one at that, that has processes, that has enterprise thinking, that has complexities, that has hierarchical structures, that really gives light to the way that people work with one another. Sometimes well, a lot of the times not so much. And so one of the biggest takeaways, I think, is what not to do, whether it's culturally, whether it's process wise, tooling wise, watching someone else make mistakes, observing those, parlaying that onto the self to say, don't think I want to be the one to make that mistake next time, and learning from someone else's observations. So those are all kind of stemming directly from experience. Now, you may not take the 20 years that I have to have taken that jump out, but at least a foundational set of processes and people and tooling to kind of understand how to grow into a potential company. That would be one to start. How about yours?
Yeah, I think I was a little bit methodical with my jumps in my job. So like I specifically kind of went from job to job with the specific experience I wanted. I was a little bit like forecasting 5, 10 years ahead, which I know not everybody is. And so for me, it's like I was like, I want D2C, then I want B2B, then I want $1 million company, then I want $1 billion company, then I want tech, and then I want this, right? And then I want like food. And so I jumped around and got different things. And I think when people look at their histories and how long they stayed in corporate or how short or whatever, if somebody actually wanted to create an intentional path to get to ideal first time founder kind of role, it's actually really, really great if you can do work in a small startup, work in a big corporate, work like a year maybe in each one over a 5 year period. You get 5 different varieties of like small, big, this industry, that industry. That way, when you jump into your first time founder role, you're going to be really, really primed with all the things that kind of you're talking about, where it's like, there's transferability. Like when you go to be a first time founder, you got to wear a lot of hats. You got to learn. Maybe you weren't a marketer in whatever role you were in your career for 3 years, 5 years, whatever. You're going to be moving up in like engineer, senior engineer, whatever, marketer, whatever. Like you're moving up, right?
On a single day too.
Yeah. And so you're in your career, you're moving up all in a single role, getting more and more senior in a single role. Maybe you have a little bit of pivot, but not too much, because then you don't get hireable. But then when you jump into founder role, you're doing all the hats of the companies that you were in before. And so you go from like 1 to 2 hats to like 25 different hats all in the same day, if not all in the same hour, sometimes all in the same conversation, right? So, but when you come like you have from these other experiences, as opposed to just right out of college, which is still a different type of first time founder that's still valuable, when you come with all these different experiences, we see things like managing teams of people or even managing a team of people. We see different compliance structures. We see these things. And when we can do it, when we can have people take a little bit from startup level before they became their first time founder, take a little bit from startup, take a little bit from mid-size, take a little bit from corporate, and then apply that to like your planning in the early stages. That's really important, right? It's bad when people take a full on corporate, like let's apply full scale stuff to now. It's like, no, you got to be scrappy, but you got to be scrappy in a way that doesn't compromise your long term.
Yeah, I love that so much. I actually was talking to somebody who's about to be a grad, who is entrepreneurial, already has a company that they've started, and they are mindfully taking a step into corporate, knowing not only will they need a stable paycheck for a period of time coming out of school, and that's just good financial sense, but they've recognized the value of the experience that they've yet to gain from being in a structured organization. So I just was having the best conversation with somebody who knows that they've got this entrepreneurial spirit that they've already started to exercise. And they know that there's some additional steps that they also need to take in making that a really intentional path. Like for me, because I saw no evil, heard no evil otherwise than corporate at the time, like my own path was very intentional within the growth rate that, and the growth roles that I wanted to step into. Like within tech at the time, it was your CTO, your traditional CIO. That later on evolved into more of like a chief digital officer role that started to recognize that like, oh, digital is different now. And yes, it's not marketing, it's, tech and experience and customer experience and all those things. So that evolved over time. But in the beginning, those were very foundational roles. So like I've done development, I've done QA, I've done business analysis, I've then transitioned into more like call it leadership, but still from a project management standpoint, it's your project leader role. Then you evolve into project management. And of course, eventually it's like director. And then you take on more of those true organizational kind of like executive leadership roles. But over time, like when I would build, manage, divest, unfortunately, integrate teams, et cetera, it would be with those basic skills in mind, empathizing for those roles, understanding exactly their inputs and what makes those individually successful to come together as part of a broader team structure. All of that is like a bottom up approach. You can't necessarily fast forward through those steps. Again, I'm not saying spending years in them, but to your point, just kind of jumping around, piecing them together into what ultimately will become a much clearer, bigger picture. That's just time well spent right there.
Yeah, I think regardless of how you do your first time founder role or any sort of founder role, it's taking a long-term approach. That might be a long-term approach in jumping different jobs to get different experiences, or even and when you're starting your company, it's realizing this isn't going to be a short 1 year, 2 year kind of thing. You got to be thinking in terms of 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, like how long it's going to take you to get something off the ground. And that means you can't just be starting with any idea or even running with any idea and just thinking like, oh, cool idea in the marketplace. I want to run with this cool product or this cool idea. You actually have to think like, what am I rooted in? What am I passionate about? What have I been building up in the neurons of my brain over years? And then I'm now going to play that out over years. And this is something I can passionately work on because it's going to take a lot of time for you to skill up in all these different hats and then learn to delegate hats and then learn to scale a company. And it's something that you have to do a long time. A lot of people are not positioned brain wise or have skilled themselves up in the way their brain is structured to do long-term things that are high-paced movements. Some people are just like, I want to start an idea. So it's a totally different mindset for people to really look at and be like, am I doing this for more than just an idea? And is my brain like suited for it? And or am I going to take my brain to the gym and actually make it suited for it?
Yeah, you're definitely hitting on my next kind of pet peeve observation. Maybe we can affect the following statement with better outcomes, that being most first-time founders fail, or the first-time founder failure rate is extremely high. And it's almost like excusing the fact that you will probably learn on your first experience. And I'm not saying that, you should not have that naivete to say, oh, I'm going to be successful no matter what, like I'm the next unicorn, 100%. But maybe that failure rate can be mitigated just slightly because there will be foundations in place and because you won't be wasting that first great idea that you've had because the execution fell short, or to your point, you didn't have the endurance to go through the hard stuff and really have the people, the process, and the technology in place to bolster the journey ahead, recognizing that there's that long-term vision. So all of that kind of comes together. And if you're not willing to make that investment up front, as any career requires, I just don't think in this day and age there's too many shortcuts to take and really kind of consider those outcomes to be outliers.
Yep, 100%. No shortcuts. And I think we could talk about this forever. And we will probably do another video, but thank you for chatting today, Zoya.